Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Influential Oregonian, where we have discussions on Oregon history and academics and interview important people who have made history within or in the name of the Beaver State. I'm your host, Marcus Axford, joined by my boon companions, archaeologist David Winkler and Finn J.D. John of Offbeat Oregon. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Marcus.
Great to be here.
Yes, our inaugural episode, as it were. Um, I'm all over the place with excitement about this. There's just so much to to talk about. But let's go ahead and start with why this show even exists. Um, for our first episode, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to kind of get into the history of all three of us as your the voices that are going to be in your ears, or if you're watching it on YouTube, your eyes going forward. Because we all.
Hopefully, my parole officer doesn't see this. I don't really have a parole officer. I just had to say that because you never
Parole
know.
officer is what he calls his cat.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. Yeah, don't deport me, please.
I thought it was your wife. Your wife
No,
is your
that's
parole
your
officer.
parole officer,
Actually,
Marcus.
no. I think us married gentlemen all have something to bond with about that. Yeah, my wife's my PO.
So weird that it seems like men really don't like being married.
Men, I gotta tell you, David, married men like to joke about not liking being married, but you know, unless there's actually some bad stuff happening at home, it's just funny.
That's good to know.
It's kind of like dad jokes, They're
Yeah,
not funny. No one laughs at them.
yeah.
You just do them because they're a bonding thing.
It's a cultural thing. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's kind of why I got fell out of interest with like Jeff Dunham, because after a while, like when you started hearing about his marital problems and stuff, and you realized that Walter was basically his.
Jeff Dunham? Oh my
Yeah, yeah.
God.
Well,
I stopped watching him the minute I laid eyes on Peanut.
That's a
Oh
throwback to
my
2005.
gosh. Oh, this guy's not as clever as he thinks he is.
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
yeah,
Can I
I
just say, when I was 14 years old, Jeff Dunham was the funniest thing I ever saw.
yeah,
I thought he
yeah.
was funny until he dragged out that little purple bush baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Wasn't that like a Dr. Seuss puppet that he repurposed?
I don't know.
Was it? I don't know. I just started realizing that basically, in a way, he was like talking trash about his marriage through Walter, and I'm like, ooh. I mean,
Oh,
comedy is all about perspective, and it's expressive and stuff, but I'm not like people say, oh, you're mad at that. There's plenty of comedians who've said worse. I'm like, yeah, but I feel like there's a level of honesty at least. Like a lot of comedians are at least honest about what they're talking about, whereas I felt there was just some sort of slight-handedness in this. I don't know.
I really feel sympathy for comedians because it's one of those things where what they're doing can stop working without any warning at any time and just leave them high and dry. And I've seen it happen, and it's like these guys live on the razor's edge. I'm glad that's not my line.
I was gonna say kind of like this show.
Yeah, but we're delivering something that has external value in terms of historical interest
Right.
other than making people laugh. And if people decide to stop laughing,
There,
yeah,
yeah, because your whole
We've still
purpose is
got
to,
history.
yeah,
I'm not saying that that isn't valuable. It's
Yeah.
super valuable, but
Yeah.
it's black smoke and magic, and no one understands how it works.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, speaking of this show, I really wanted to, because I'm making a joke about like this show. Well, the thing is like I've been doing solo work for about 2-3 years. I used to do a lot of work like this. We'll get into it obviously, but I think you two haven't really done this kind of like group podcasting at all. So it's kind of like, for me, it's like getting back into the saddle thing. I loved doing solo work, but I kind of got to a point where I'm like, I really miss sitting down and having a discussion with people. And Finn, we've known each other for, oh my goodness, we're going on 3 years. Um,
Yeah. Oh
it,
wow.
yeah.
Time does fly, doesn't it?
Our friendship is as old as Welcome to Oregon. um, by the
My
way,
friendship is as old as a bottle of whiskey on my fridge.
well, David, you and I have we've known of each other for a while. Actually, only known
Mhm.
each other because we have the same like core friend group.
We have
Um,
crisscrossed so many times and
hmm
just never actually met each other until recently.
Well, it's like Kenny and I didn't even realize we knew each other, and Kenny's one of my best friends. Actually, he's at the hierarchy. It's a running joke in the friend group that I'm his so-called best friend.
Yeah.
So we technically met each other before we even knew each other at Rose City Comic Con in Salem.
Hmm.
We took a picture together. And we didn't realize it until we started hanging out and becoming friends. And Kenny's like, "Oh my God, you had the ODST suit, didn't you?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
why?" He's like, "I have a picture of you with me
I
somewhere."
have multiple pictures of you in that suit.
Do you?
I do. Yeah, I was also a frequenter of Rose City Comic Con.
Wow, ladies! Wow, we're finding some new information out live. I didn't
Yeah.
know
I've
that. That's
never been
cool.
to Rose City Comic Con. I shared a table with Black or Dark Tidings Press at
Mm.
Wizarding World Comic Con
Oh, yeah.
a couple 3 years ago when Henry Winkler and the Batmobile were in town.
Oh, that's so
But
cool.
Oh, look,
yeah, I've got
David, your relative.
Yeah, yeah,
And
no.
actually, before I
Can I
just
just say this into a microphone? No, we are not related.
no. I just realized that I said Rose City, and I've been once in that suit too. But actually, I'm at Cherry City Comic Con, because I realized, wait, Rose
oh
City, Salem. People are probably gonna be thinking, wait a minute, no, that's not right, and that's correct. It was
Yeah, I
Cherry
just
City.
realized I just realized I was also incorrect because I also used to do like all of them for like 4 or 5 years. I went to all the Oregon Comic Cons. And sometimes they just kind of blend together in my head. It's kind of the same convention.
Okay, well, this is going to be fun as we go on and off track everywhere, but that's okay.
oh
This
yeah.
this is the first episode. We're going to fine tune this as we go along. Again, it's everyone. You guys are inexperienced in the group stuff. I haven't done it for 2 3 years. I'm very rusty. In fact, we did this. We tried doing this last Saturday, and it took an hour and 45 minutes to set up.
In my defense, I was ready to go right away.
Oh, well,
I was
that
on time.
no, that's fine. That's fine. There were so many complications I did not foresee, and that just happens. So yeah, basically, I wanted to do a show where I get to sit down with some really, really amazing people that are colleagues and friends, and also sit down with other people that do a lot of cool stuff. So we're not gonna have. Originally, I had so many ideas for it. Originally, I wanted it to be like just a guest show, but I realized that we're probably not going to get guests on every week. So I'm like, oh, we're gonna release this as we get guests. And then and then Finn's like, "Oh wait, I didn't realize we are going to be doing this over Zoom. We can do it every weekend." I'm like, "All right, I guess we're gonna try," but that's fine because there's a lot of stuff regarding the state of Oregon that we can sit and talk about, or I mean, even just doing this, sitting down and you know, BSing and talking about either some personal stuff or a lot of the work that we do. I figured we could take 10 minutes each episode before we have like guests or whatever to actually talk about personal stuff. David, I know you have some really cool brand new work stuff, and Finn, I know you just did about I think a month ago or so. You did a really really cool thing. So David, why don't you go ahead and talk about your new job and stuff and
Yeah. Yeah, so in the archaeology world, like the majority of the paying work is through, private contracting sort of stuff. It's basically just land use compliance. I do a lot of like monitoring construction sites, or I'll do like some test shovel pits, in a proposed construction area. So I just got hired by um, one of the bigger, we call them CRM firms, which stands for Cultural Resource Management. And I just got a temporary contract with SWCA, which is based out of, I think it's Arizona, but they have a Portland and a Corvallis office, and they have like a Seattle office. So they do the West Coast. Um, as far as I know, it's just kind of a temporary position, but they are open to potentially extending it depending on what kind of work they have going. The unfortunate part about what I do is there is a lot that I am just legally and ethically not allowed to talk about. And it's not like it's, we're not assuming the worst about people, but we just understand that people are curious. They want to go and have a little look. But for liability reasons, they can't.
Right, that's understandable.
As
Well,
Yeah.
what was it? Chelsea Rose, one of your was she I can't remember, a mentor
She
or
was one of my teachers.
okay, okay.
So I did my field training. We call it field school, but it's basically it's an upper level college course that gives you a full rundown on how to do field work, paperwork. They taught me how to camp. I haven't been camping since I was 5 years old.
Well, we need to change that.
Yeah, I know.
You're missing out on
Yeah,
it's Oregon, for crying out loud. You're
I
missing out on so
know.
much.
I've been such an indoor kid, and I gotta tell you, I was terrified to go camping, but this thing was so bougie. Like, we had really nice campgrounds. We had access to like rivers and lakes that we could actually swim in and like hang out in at the end of our 110-degree workday.
Oh my god.
And then like they also brought pre-cooked homemade dinners for each night.
That does not sound like
Wow.
camping to me.
No,
I
it doesn't.
I mean, you get
So
the mountain
bougie.
house and dump it into your plastic bowl and
Yeah.
pour in a little bit of water from the creek that you hope does not have any giardia spores in it, and you're off to the races.
They made us ramen. Like one of the guys is part Hawaiian, and so he made like a Hawaiian version of ramen for us.
Oh man. That is
No,
cool. But yeah, I was talking about on her podcast Underground History,
mm,
which I hope to get her on with us at some
oh,
point to
she's
talk about that.
lovely.
Yeah, yeah.
She is so cool and so smart.
She had an episode where they talked about the like the caustic nature of a lot of historical artifacts because of what was used in like the last 150 to 200 years. A lot of lead, a lot of mercury, a lot of arsenic.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people know about what happened with the radium girls. That was a horrifying thing, and just a lot of that stuff in general, where especially I think it was the Victorian era, where a lot of them were essentially poisoning themselves with fashion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, that phrase "mad as a hatter" comes
yep,
from like
Yeah.
the arsenic they used to make hats.
yep.
Miners too.
Yeah.
Miners using all that quicksilver.
Hmm.
Townsend, John K. Townsend, poisoned himself with arsenic. He was a naturalist type of guy, and I'm trying to remember who else was there. I was thinking of.
Well, and to that point, like
Oh,
a lot of what I do is documenting like tin can dumps. And the
mm,
thing that people don't understand about tin cans, especially really old ones, is that they were sealed with lead. So like you could potentially, you could give yourself tetanus by handling rusty metal, but you can also, get sick from the lead in it.
Well, that's how the Franklin expedition perished. Or part of the reason is
Yeah.
because, and I learned this in elementary school too. This was it's funny because I remembered learning about it and then I forgot what exactly it was, but I always remembered how like horrifying it was. It's interesting that thinking on that, we don't teach kids of that age that stuff at that age anymore, which is unfortunate because a
Yeah.
lot of it's so important. Because you figure the Franklin expedition wasn't the first expedition to discover the Northwest Passage, but because of it, we discovered the Northwest Passage, if I remember correctly. But
Well,
Yeah.
didn't the Northwest Passage not start being a passage until relatively recently when global warming melted off some of the ice? I
Yeah, and I
think I
think
remember
that's
Yeah.
another thing
reading something
too.
about that.
Well, and then
Luther
we could
Cressman.
also. Oh,
Luther
yeah,
Cressman is who I was thinking of. That was just to finish that thought off
yeah.
because he was um, he had almost ruined the evidence of the oldest occupants of Oregon, those the
Mm,
sandals, because he painted them all
mm,
with that
Right.
preservative
Yes.
yeah.
stuff, and then
Yes.
he had to throw himself on the mercy of some looters who had stolen some
Yeah.
of the stuff, or hadn't stolen. They had just explored the cave on their own hook. It wasn't illegal to do, but he
Yeah.
was lucky they did because otherwise he wouldn't have had any idea how old those things really were.
Hmm.
Well, David, thank you for talking about what you're doing recently. It's very fascinating, and of course, here shortly, we'll start with you and kind of get into why had such a fascination in archaeology and started your journey with all that, and then uh, talk more about that.
Sure.
Finn, let's move to you real quick, and I'm really curious because you talked a little bit about it on, I think, did you talk about it on Offbeat? I can't remember.
Um, Talk about what? My
Your prod, yeah, you did. Your the why you went down to California.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about this.
Well,
But
we'll get
but
we'll
but
get
apparently not.
we'll
Um,
get to that in a sec. I promise, because I'm really excited about that too.
yeah, no, that was a really cool experience. I've been on Mysteries at the Museum a couple of times. Cami Horton from OPB has reached out to have me talk about a couple of things that touch on stuff that I've written about. But the Unexplained with William Shatner reached out and said, "Hey, can you talk to us about lost cabin gold mine stories?" And so I was like, "Well, sure, that sounds great, especially if there's a 1 in 7,000 chance that I would actually get a chance to meet Bill Shatner, a man who's had a much bigger influence on my life than I certainly have had on his." But it would be lovely to meet. But he's also 94 years old, so I figured, he's not going to be on the set. And he wasn't. But yeah, it was very cool. They flew me into Long Beach, California, which, by the way, if you ever want to fly into an airport just to hang out in the airport, you know, um, that's the place to go. It's a super chill airport. If I'm ever flying into Disneyland or something like that for any reason, I try not to fly because, it's such it doesn't feel like a very American experience anymore. You have to go through the backscatter. They get to see you naked. They get to make sure that your, you know, toenail clippers aren't suitable for hijacking the airplane with. And
I don't know what could be more American than that.
yeah, aspirationally, I guess I should say, rather than in terms of the facts on the ground. But yeah, no, they had rented out a Mason's Lodge, which was quite interesting because it was a really old Mason's Lodge. It was like from um, it had been founded, I think, in 1890, and they had a whole big giant wall of portraits of all of the the grand poobah Mason guys, and some of the facial hair on some of those guys was just amazing in the 1890s. Just those giant mutton chops puffing out like this, like a poodle or something. And
Any
anyway,
plans to update your own facial hair accordingly?
if I could make those sorts of mutton chops pop out of the sides of my face, I'd be sporting them right now. This is about as interesting as it gets in terms of um, my visage. I've tried to do the best with what I had, but yeah, no, those
That's
guys with the mutton chops are just the bomb.
That's okay. I always like the first time I met you, Finn, was like I noticed the mustache. Right, I'm like, this is a very interestingly distinguished individual. And then I met David, and I'm like, he dresses like Indiana Jones. You always
Point to David.
you always look dressed for the job, and I love it.
Yeah.
Don't ever change.
We are nothing if not highly on brand.
As I'm
Finn,
if
were
you're
you born with the mustache?
Uh,
I
you
know
have to,
Marcus was born with the goatee.
you're gonna have to check with my mom on that. I don't. My memory don't go back that far.
Congratulations, Mrs. John. You've got a historian.
You can call me Colonel. Nobody else does, but I'd like him to.
Oh my god.
Then Colonel J.D. John got it.
Oh my
Your
god.
birth certificate's like that long.
There it is. Yeah, that's absolutely.
That is so great. Okay, well, we're already 20 minutes in. We're doing fantastic. Okay, so moving along, let's kind of move into the quote interview portion of this. And David, I see the sweat rolling down, so you better be prepared.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go ahead and David, let's talk about you first. So you're not much younger than me. You're about 30 years old, gonna be 31 in July. Um, how where do we start? How long have you had an interest in archaeology?
About 6 years. No.
I was gonna say,
Well,
wait a minute.
No, wait,
that's-
come on. Everybody has an interest in archaeology
Exactly.
after they watch the Indiana Jones movie. They're like,
Exactly.
every kid in the world that sees that movie is like, I want to be that guy when I grow up.
Here's the thing, though. I was a very strange and very fearful child. And so I saw those movies and just imagined, like, oh man, what if I got crushed by the boulder because I'm not as fast as Indiana Jones? So, like, I had this whole thing, like, my cousins wanted to be Indiana Jones, but I thought, I'd rather not be underground in some tomb. But, like, I liked
Fair.
the aesthetics of working outdoors with history, and so as a kid, I was more interested in paleontology.
Oh,
Um,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, but, like, I never really got very far into that, but I actually got more into like art and animation, especially when I was a teenager. But I had always had like at least a passing interest with history, like mostly military history. I like one of my special interests as a kid were samurai. And so like I would get every book on samurai that I could find and just devour them. Um, but the archaeology thing didn't really it really came about by accident. I was working at a local antique store that I was very fortunate to get hired by. I was not in a good retail situation prior to that. So I got very lucky. And further, I got very lucky because the people who worked there said, you can't do retail forever. You just go get your degree in something, get your bachelor's, get out of here, go make something of yourself. And I was listening to a lot of NPR at the time, just because I didn't have Spotify on my phone yet. And there was a morning interview where they were talking to, and I can't remember her name, unfortunately, but she, at that time, around 2018, 2019, was the lead art conservationist at the Portland Art Museum.
Oh.
And they interviewed her because she had stopped the acidic degradation of a Chinese money tree, which is a funerary object from like medieval China. And the Portland Art Museum has one. And so I got really fascinated with that idea of working hands on with artifacts and history. And so I interviewed, her name is Elizabeth Chambers, who was the previous lead conservationist at the Portland Art Museum, who trained this person who had been interviewed. And I got a hold of her, and we sat down over coffee, and she just kind of talked about what her university experience was like. And so I enrolled in the U of O, because they had advertised that they had a art conservation program. Um, that was a whole debacle. It turned out they did not yet have that program, and
Hmm.
I did not have enough to afford to go to that university, so I dropped out after one day of classes.
Wow.
Um,
Did you get your
and
money back for the term?
thankfully, yes, they weren't
Good.
going to.
Well, they always try not to, but it's
Yeah,
told
my
to do.
my stepdad is a force to be reckoned with, or he
Oh,
was.
nice.
He was. He's passed on now. but he was able to get us a refund on that. Um, and I re-enrolled at Western Oregon University, still thinking I would be an art conservationist. And so I think it was helpful that I didn't fully understand what an art conservationist was or what they did. I took a bunch of art history classes and I took an archaeology 101 class. And this was in 2019, and that was that. I in that moment on the first day of class, I knew what I wanted to do. Um, Western Oregon only had that one class, so I wound up actually majoring. Well, my major is in interdisciplinary studies, but all my classes were in social and cultural anthropology, social geography, philosophy, art history. Um, but I was able to take that and apply to Portland State, where I got accepted into their master's program for archaeology, which I just graduated from last spring.
Wow,
Right
that's
on.
fantastic. Yeah, it's weird because you talk about going to Western Oregon. I'm infamously known for having grown up in Monmouth, and also the fact that I mean, I probably tell the story way too much, and people are like, yes, of course. Just the fact that it's always fascinating to me that the name on the administration building that they have, Roy E. Llewellyn, I'm related to him. Uh,
Oh, cool.
Originally, I thought I was related, and for people wondering who that is, I can never remember his official title, but it's something. He was like the chancellor of the university system for the state of Oregon, if I remember right. And he passed away in the early 2000s, and I never met him, but originally I knew he was related by marriage. My grandmother's sister's husband's brother. five
There's
times
some small town family tree work for you.
5 times removed. No. Well, and his brother Peyton Llewellyn was a judge, and something I'll probably talk about real quick when we get to me is I am also a member of the Monmouth Historic Commission, and when I got my packet, I looked some stuff up, and it was really cool because I saw Peyton's house where it was by the park. And then I found out later that I was actually related to that family by blood because my side at some point in the 30s married into the Llewellyns. But what I'm shooting at is it's interesting how we do talk about crossing paths more than once. It's really interesting to think that like we were so close together all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
could have even actually ran into each other, saw each other, whatever.
Oh, I know for a fact we have. I have this weird thing where I never forget a face.
Oh, that's
Um,
that's
and
great.
so yeah, and so like I
Thanks for
have
the
seen,
warning. If I
yes,
ever go on the lam, I'm going to have to get a good surgeon.
I would never rat you out, Finn, ride or die.
Right on.
But yeah, like so you know, I have seen Marcus many times, and so it's like his face is just one that I've remembered. Like I didn't know his name, I don't know anything about him. He's just someone that I've seen a lot. Because the truth of the Pacific Northwest is it is one giant small town.
Yeah,
It
Um,
kind of
and
is.
it is a very small world out here.
yeah, it is really.
You will bump into people, and yeah. So at least to kind of get back to my background, like the more exciting stuff that I've been doing has been my volunteer work for the last 3 or so years with the city of Salem. City of Salem is the only city in the country that has a city level historic preservation official.
Hmm.
Her name is Kimberly Fitzgerald. And it's funny because as I was graduating Western Oregon, I reached out to Chelsea Rose because I had gotten interested specifically in public archaeology, which is that public facing, you know, it's excavation and research for the benefit of the public,
Yeah,
where
we're
they're doing
basically public historians, working
very
public
much so.
Yeah,
historians.
yeah.
Yeah, and this is just the shovel tip of public history.
Yeah.
And Chelsea had recommended that I get in touch with Kimberly because, I'm a Salem boy. And she very generously agreed to mentor me, and she's been doing so for the last 3 years. the work we've been doing has been of the Methodist mission to Salem. That would have been headed by Jason Lee back in the
Really?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
1830s.
Good old
And
Jason Lee.
So if you
that's it.
run across any copies of The Grains by
Yeah.
Ruth, what's her name? Ruth Rover. Her
No, I
real name is
haven't.
something else, but she came to that mission and was basically run out of it because William Wilson with
Mm,
two L's um, claimed to have seduced her to try and
really?
force her to marry him. And
Wow.
when she didn't cooperate, he basically denounced her, and she was sort of read out of meeting because she was supposed to be a school teacher.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to entrust their kids to a strumpet like that. And so
Right.
it was
Well, yeah.
it's quite a story. And
I'll check that out.
she seems to be one of those kind of lightning rod ladies, like a I think maybe a borderline personality type of thing,
Mm,
because but just a lightning rod for drama, just a
yeah.
stormy petrel of the frontier. And she wrote an anonymous book called The Grains, or the something about, anyway, she wrote under Ruth Rover,
Okay.
and darn it, I can't remember her name, but I've written a story about her. She's fascinating.
I need to check that out because my I'm doing a certification project. One of the thing, like, I am not a archaeologist. I am a cultural resources field technician. Archaeologist is a legal title that you need a permit to hold. But for conversation, it's just easier to say that I'm an archaeologist.
Well, it's no different than we've talked before about how, like, I have that imposter syndrome of, like, I call myself a historian, but technically, yeah, a historian goes through, like, all the college and the training and blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
But I actually looked it up because, you guys were always saying, no, you do the work, you do blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
Um,
Yeah,
and
historian isn't controlled like that. It's not like being an engineer.
right.
right. And so I actually looked it up because I'm like, well, I'm not an amateur historian, but I'm not a full, like, college educated historian. And there is actually, because of, the technology we have in doing podcasting and stuff, there is actually a gray area where we're still me, a real historian, in the sense that, you're doing, like you said, doing public historical work. And of course, just by the evidence of the show alone, I'm very voracious in in getting people, together and like, this is important, this is cool, this is fun, let's do it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so archaeologist is just someone who can hold a government permit to do an excavation. And they lead that and they have access to like the site form databases and all that stuff. So my project, in order to get certified in the state of Oregon, which is the hardest state in the union to get the certification,
Really, why
um,
is that?
there are many reasons. One of the big ones is that you need to do, like in most states, you can, like if you did a thesis, you can just submit your thesis, and if it clears whatever standards that the state has, then you're good to go. In the state of Oregon, you need to do an original piece of research, which is
Hmm.
expensive and time consuming.
Is it because Oregon just decided to have high standards, or?
Partially, it's very complicated. It's very political. Personally, I don't understand it all that well.
It
Okay.
sounds like the kind of things that are installed to hack away the rungs of the ladders from which someone climbed to prominence.
Partially, like, that's some of the criticism that I've heard.
Yeah.
Like, again, not having really experienced it, I'm not really certain what it is. Like, there are accusations that it's a political thing, but then there are also some deeply practical and ethical reasons for this. Um, it, like the state of Oregon, at least in archaeological terms, tends to work very closely with the tribes,
I was
and a
gonna
lot of
say,
our,
if you were just talking about this the sandals,
yeah,
so, and I've written about that as well, where yeah, we're Oregon is like a very significant state for that kind of history. So I
yeah.
guess it would make sense in a way for the state of Oregon out of any state to have those standards.
It does
Well,
make sense. I think about what happened with Kennewick Man.
the
Yeah.
ancient one,
Yeah.
yes. Well, and that
Quite.
was a thing where the U.S. government broke the law that they just made.
Okay,
um,
that never happens.
yeah, no,
You
never.
can
It's
just
just like
you can just ask any tribe member
archaeology
about
isn't
that.
grave robbing. I have a permit. But
By the way,
to kind of finish my point here, so this project that I'm working on is going to be kind of tied to what Kimberly has been working on, because specifically we're working on the boarding school that Jason Lee set up, the second one, not the one at Mission Bottom.
so I
The
think that might be the one that Margaret Jewett Bailey taught in, but maybe it was the first one. I found
Yeah,
her, by the way. That this is her,
yeah. So
Margaret
they
Jewett Bailey.
Oh wow, look at
Yeah,
that.
Lee sent for reinforcements while he was at the first location. One of the teachers died, his first wife died, and their child. And then he moved the mission to Salem, or at least the area that would become Salem. The native word is Chemickety, which is where we get Chemeketa
Yeah.
from, means place of peace. Um, so this project is based on that boarding school, and I'm just going to be working on expanding that work.
Cool.
Excellent. That is awesome. And of course, this isn't the last we're going to hear from, that people are going to hear from all of us about our work,
No.
but it's a good start.
Yep.
So Finn,
Oh yeah.
well, you started, um, I know you've done journalism, newspaper stuff, specifically for like Cottage Grove. Uh, and I know that you have this path where you wanted to start writing about history and you started doing, Offbeat Oregon and all that stuff. So kind of take us, which actually, before I forget, David, original to Oregon, right?
No. No,
Get him
I
out of
was
here.
born.
Get him out.
I
Time
know,
to
I
go. Time to go.
know. I moved to Salem when I was 10.
I guess it kind of counts. So yeah, Finn, you are a original Oregonian, correct?
Yeah. I was actually born in Salem Hospital of all places. My folks lived on the S curves outside of Silverton.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, it doesn't. I mean, those where you spent your diaper years,
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
no.
think makes a
No,
difference.
no, it doesn't. You have no influence on the
Yeah,
world.
but yeah, no, I escaped from the University of Oregon in, I want to say, 1991, with a degree in English literature that I've never really used until this year. Um, but yeah, I started out in basically out of college. Started out as a newspaper reporter, which is a notoriously poorly paid industry. And also an industry that was fairly thriving in 1991 and less so in 2006, 2007, when I decided that this ship was sinking and I needed to figure out something else to do. So I went back to grad school, got a degree in literary nonfiction, a master's. I graduated from that in 2010. Um, and my major project that I did for that, basically like a master's thesis, was on Herbert Hoover and his he is like famously kind of this Oregon's native stepson. He was born in Iowa, but he came out here when he was 7, and was basically an orphan, raised by Quaker relatives. What I was interested in was not his presidency, which was by any lights a complete disaster. But the reputation that that presidency ruined was a really sterling one, because the man had saved basically the entire nation of Belgium and much of northern France from starving to death, while during World War One, while the Germans and the British were squabbling over whose job it was to feed them, while they were occupied by Germany. So that was my that was kind of that, and I got into that. I learned about that story because I had started Offbeat Oregon History as a weekly newspaper column, because I wanted to keep a deadline in my life. I've been meeting deadlines forever, And I was like, well, you know, um, I want to have a topic that I can like go deep on and learn lots about. So I launched it in 2008, shortly after I started in grad school. And for a little while, I was doing it monthly, but that didn't work for anybody's deadlines because newspapers are either daily or weekly or in portions of a week. Very few are monthly. So if I'm doing it monthly, then sometimes they can go 5 weeks or 4 weeks, and nobody really knows whether there's an article available. So I switched it back to every week, and now it's to every 2 weeks. So yeah, that's Offbeat Oregon history. It's been going since 2008. The early years were kind of terrible because I didn't know what I was doing. Um, I've rewritten all of the 2008 and 2009 ones. And I'm kind of working my way through the 2010 ones right now, actually, to try and, kind of replace them by going in there and doing a little bit more research because some of them, and I'm actually finding some errors in them, which, I would have hoped that somebody would have contacted me and said, hey, that's not actually correct, but nobody
Oh
did.
no, no, no.
Maybe nobody was reading them.
I get it. Very first episode I did, I said that there were 60 million Native Americans living in Oregon, and it was because I read the source material wrong. It's 60 million Native Americans in North America.
I did that exact same thing actually in my latest project because I was doing I was talking about the St. Giles slum in London, in which the worst part of it was 5 acres in extent, and there were 30,000 people living in the St. Giles slum.
Right.
So I said that there were 30,000 people living in 5 acres. And
Right.
I got to tell you, I wish I was a little bit better at offhand math because I wouldn't have made that mistake.
There's a reason none of us
Stack 'em about
studied
8
math.
deep. 5 acres is like 400 feet on each side of a square. Can you imagine 30,000 people in that?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, because
Anyway.
that's what, Dallas, Monmouth, Independence combined.
That's a $10,000 apartment building in Manhattan.
Oh my God, that's great.
You mean a building full of $10,000 apartments, or one that you could
Yes,
pick up for
yes.
$10K? Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of how I ended up in this sort of like Oregon history niche. And I after I got my job, because that was the other thing that happened. I kind of won the lottery in 2010, except that it didn't pay me money. It gave me a job that fit with what I needed to do, which was a friend of mine who was teaching writing for the media professional at Oregon State University got her dream job at Northwestern University in Chicago. Now, Pam actually had been the personal assistant to Mike Royko. You guys are probably not old enough to know who that is, but he was a world famous columnist for the Chicago Tribune back in the day. And being his personal assistant was a tremendous um, uh, well, I don't want to say privilege, but it was a big credential. So she had that, and then Northwestern University is in Chicago. It's her hometown. They're like, hey, you want to teach newspaper writing here? And then you won't have to squabble with the folks at Oregon State University over whether the new media communications department is supposed to be all about, um, newspaper, magazine, and television writing, or whether it's supposed to be about entertainment writing. And you can just come over here and do what you love. She's like, I'm out of here. Hey, guys, I'm giving you 3 weeks notice, which is better than 2 weeks, right? And they're like, but you have a class scheduled. She's like, good luck. So the head of the department lit up the network, and I just happened to be at loose ends and suitable for the job. So it was like getting struck by lightning, frankly.
I've been in that class too. You had me do a lecture at the end of January,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things where I don't know why I've always kind of wanted to teach, even though I'm not entirely sure I'm good at it, but it's really
No, you've got the knack. I mean, seriously.
it was really rewarding to be in that classroom and talking with these kids. Some of them, obviously are kind of like a little eye glazy, whatever, and some of them are like edge of their seat listening intently. And it's just it's a really rewarding experience to teach what you know, because again, as I'll talk about it when it gets to be my turn, it that's what I grew up with, was listening to all the old timers tell stories, and BS and all that other stuff. So yeah, no, it's a great classroom
Yeah.
to be in, absolutely. Penny
Yeah.
Dreadful though. So
Ah,
you
yes.
have Offbeat Oregon, which is absolutely amazing, and then you have the Penny Dreadful Story Hour, which I love so much.
Yeah, yeah. No, funny you should mention that. I just happened to there we go. Yes, the Penny Dreadful Story Hour. Is, yeah. This was my idea from actually the way that this came about was I was trying to create an audiobook of Sweeney Todd. And about halfway through the process, I went and looked to see how if there were other versions of Sweeney Todd on, available and how they were selling. And there were a couple of them. They weren't very good. I mean, I'm not worried about competing with them, but they weren't selling very well at all. So I'm thinking, well, gee, there's probably not much of a market for Sweeney Todd. And then it became hard to motivate myself. So I decided that I was going to do this and basically just do reading it as a podcast. And so I launched that. And then at some point, I don't know what happened, but I kind of realized that it was sort of like, you know, these stories, penny dreadfuls, are basically story papers that came out, and it was like a TV show. Every week a new episode would come out, and you would read it, or the other kids on the block who were literate and you weren't, they would read it to you, and then you would wait for the next week for the next one to come out. So there's not much of an opportunity for like complex arcs to develop. Something has to happen every time. So you patch them all together as a novel. They don't hold up very well. They're they're like thing. The dramatic arc is like at a high level. It doesn't go up. Tension doesn't build. And I thought, well, what about if I get a whole bunch of other ones of these and do multiple different penny dreadfuls in a 1 hour reading experience, so that it's kind of like what the way you would experience these things in 1845. So I went out and got, in addition to Sweeney Todd, am I still sharing that? No, I'm not. Good. In addition to Sweeney Todd, I had done an audiobook version of Varney the Vampire. So that one was easy. I could just like take those and just patch them in. I didn't have to record them or anything. But I wanted more of them. I wanted one that involved a highway robber, because highway robber lit was pretty big in like 1850. So Dick Turpin in particular was the highway robber that everyone thinks of. So I found Black Bess by Edward Viles, and also Spring-Heeled Jack, who's like a Victorian Batman character. And the last one, I wanted to get something. At first, I really wanted, because see, here's the thing: novel writing was a woman's game back in the day. In the Regency period, all the best novelists are women. Mary Shelley, Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters. They're all women because the men were like poets. They were
Right.
doing the poetry thing. They wouldn't stoop to writing a novel. They thought it was crass or whatever. So I was like, I can't be doing this and not having any female writers. So I'm like looking to see if any women were actually writing penny dreadfuls. And I found The Black Band by Mary Elizabeth Braddon, which and I came to it because I wanted women represented in my thing, but it is the most, as you would expect, given that the nature of the of novel writing. It is the most literarily satisfying of the bunch. It's really quite good. I'm almost afraid to read it each week because stuff happens that is so intense. We've already had a fratricide and uh, a couple of the most deliciously awful villains. Yeah, it's good stuff. So anyway, I got those five, and I'm hitting that every week. I'm thinking about doing something break them out and make them shorter form, but yeah, we'll see where it takes me.
Yeah, that's great. I know the actual real world lore of Spring. I thought it was Spring Hill, not Spring
Oh,
Heel. But yeah, I know the original lore about him. Basically, this demonic entity that people fear, and even to this day, there's still a lot of debate between historians whether these were real incidents or if it was just paranoia in of the time, because he's depicted as this monstrous being with metal claws and breathes blue fire. I think it's blue fire,
yeah, Blue Fire, yeah.
red
But
eyes.
by the time Edward Viles got hold of it, though, he got turned into a superhero.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He
yeah,
bounds over. He's already rescued two fair young maidens from a fate worse than death. And
yes,
now we're only on chapter 7. It's just ripe stuff. It's so rich and thick. And the Dick Turpin one is, I mean, the guy's an unvarnished hero. He's gone and rescued a maiden from a fate worse than death too. So it's good stuff.
yeah. I look forward to it every single week. All right. Well, I know we're getting a little short on time, so I'll go ahead and go next, which is always a shame because it's like there's
I'm
so.
sorry I've been such a hog.
Oh yes, absolutely.
You wind me up and I'm hard to stop.
All of. Well, that's the problem. Is we could sit here and do like 3 hours of a show that nobody wants to listen to,
Aw.
because let's face it, they're
Well,
only
somebody will listen. Hi, Mom.
hi. But yeah, the only podcast people listen to that are 3 hours maybe are D&D podcasts. I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
So,
Me too.
but yeah, yeah, Legends of Evantris, shout out.
Best podcast on the left.
Yep.
They don't need my shout out. But
No,
here
they
it
don't.
is.
No, they don't. But yeah, there's so much for all of us to talk about, and I love listening to you guys, and it's so interesting to. Well, it's like Finn. I swear to God, I see your name everywhere. When I'm doing research for something, I'm reading it. I'm reading the source material, and I'm like, "This is Finn's, isn't it?" And I look at the name, like, "Yep, it is."
It's good to it's good to know my writing style is distinctive enough to be noticed like that. That's a huge compliment you just paid me.
Yeah, yeah, it is real. And honestly, sometimes I get a little surprised when it's not you, but then I'm like, okay, the name, and then I actually look in the fine print, taken from Offbeat Oregon.
Oh yeah, there's a couple because it's under a Creative Commons license, so people are free to go ahead and like nick it and use it here and there. But they are supposed to give me credit when they do. So
Right.
hopefully they've been doing that.
Yeah, so, and then, yeah, all of the stuff you've done, the things you've been invited on, and I'm over here going, I want to do all that stuff. But yeah, you've also been
Well,
doing
you're well
it.
on your way, man.
Yeah, I know. And that's just it. You've been doing this for over a decade. What? 2008. That's 15 years. No, yeah, 15 years ago. Oh,
That's a quarter of my life, Benny.
not to date anyone here. I was
Oh my goodness.
I was 18 in 2008.
45, almost a quarter of my life.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, granted, a lot of what I do, I search after, like something I wanted to talk about at the head of the show, and before I get into my story, that I didn't quite get to. Instead, Google whatever decided to ding the audio for some reason. You can't quite ever seem to get the computer to stop throwing stuff at me. I log out of Facebook so I don't get any notifications that pick up on the audio. Sure enough, Google just decided to randomly notify me of something I don't care about. But yeah,
That's going to happen. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be dinged.
yeah.
So, if that's a deal killer for you, we're sorry to lose you, but
I was gonna say, if you want perfect audio, pay us lots of money so we can all, make this a living and have a studio with quality and sound engineers and everything.
speaking of lots of money, this episode is brought to you by Jones's Wrinkle Cream, which is how I don't look like I'm actually 89 years old. And also, Jones has a fine line of hair dye as well. They don't supply Rudy Giuliani with his. He gets his from shoe polishers. Okay, sorry.
No, you're good. Oh my
We
god.
need a sponsor. Hey, somebody sponsor us.
Yes. Manscaped. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm waiting on Ridge Wallets.
Just not Honey or what's that one? Established titles.
Yeah.
No, Masterworks. That's it.
Mm.
I've actually punched out of YouTube videos when they started being sponsored by Masterworks because that just feels super pump and dump scammy to me. Anybody that takes money from those people, I'm just not gonna.
So, yeah, was reminded that the Oregon Stewardship Award, that's awarded by the Museum of Natural and Cultural History through the University of Oregon, they're doing their Oregon Stewardship Award. And I'm like, you know what? We're a year farther into what we're all doing. So I think I only plugged Welcome to Oregon in, but next year I'm going to plug the network as a whole, however that's going to work, and basically fill up the nomination with everyone's shows and stuff. But, they came back, they said, sorry, you didn't win, which I expected, but apparently they were so impressed by the nominations this year that they gave all of us a free year membership, which
nice.
means we have access to over 300 museums around the world for free.
This is the Museum of Natural and Cultural History.
Yes, their
Say it
stewardship
right,
award.
It's Omunch.
Oh my.
Ah, yes.
Welcome to the city of Omanchu. For you Avatar: The Last Airbender fans.
Oh,
So yeah, that was honestly like to actually like have that email come through, and then to have the paper to get my registry and everything done, and I'm just waiting on it. But hopefully I get an actual like paper certificate, because they mentioned that I was going to get one that I can actually frame. But to get that
Awesome.
was like a massive accomplishment. And then of course there is that imposter syndrome creeping in. That it's like, well, I mean, I only got it because I did, I nominated, nobody nominated me, which is probably a ridiculous thing to say, but the feelings
yes,
there.
yes. Let's identify that as a ridiculous thing to say right off the top here.
You've got to be your own best advocate.
Yes,
That's
yes,
true
you do.
for doctors' offices, and that's true for awards.
Yes,
I
yes,
think
you do.
Lynn Carter was the one who said in the introduction to one of his terrible, terrible derivative novels that he who tooteth not his horn, the same shall not be tooted.
Hmm.
Interesting. I like that
Yeah.
proverb.
I like the way he put that. It was a terrible book though. It was basically John Carter of Mars on a different planet with a different guy.
So anyway, I know we're already creeping into an hour, so I'll try not to make my life story too long. But so basically, I grew up with a family yard maintenance business, and so I grew up with manual labor and stuff, and certain expectations that come along with the business and everything. But part of me always wanted to. We grew up with video games. When video games were really starting to take off with Halo and the Xbox era and the 360 and all this other stuff, and games journalism began to become a very popular thing, and of course this is before podcasts were really a thing. So I started doing my own journalism when I was 17, I think, going on 18, with Halo 3, because I was always so excited to talk about the DLC coming out, and I would post stuff to MySpace. To date everybody.
Wow, yeah.
So
I had a MySpace account. I didn't really know what to do with it though.
I miss MySpace.
Sorry, keep going. We're running low on time. I've got to stop talking.
No, you're good. So yeah, not to get into the nitty-gritty details, I loved doing that. I loved writing. I've always loved writing. When I was in elementary school, I wrote this like novella. I swear to God, or this novel. Because I was really into Myst at the time, so I wrote it as sort of kind of the same thing. It was called Treetop Fortress. I was always into writing.
Huh.
So, I went through and doing games journalism stuff off and on, and I had my own like little website and all this other stuff. And I think it was around 2000 and what, 17 or 18, I can't remember. Podcasts at this point are really, really, on are thriving and stuff, and I'm like, I kind of want to start my own and do games journalism. So I started preparing, and then I had my mom pass away at the end of 2018, and I had it was so unfortunate. I was so looking forward to having her see all this, and it was that moment where I'm like, you know what, I've just got to start it. So literally like a month later, I start hit the ground running.
You were still raw the first time I met you. That was a fresh wound.
Uh, yeah, I mean, you figure that even good lord, all the sounds. You figure even I started the show in 2022. No, 2023. But yeah, I've been working on healing for years. Um, it's been it'll be 7 years this year, and it's I'm working on a book because I'm compressing down all my scripts into a book, and I've been working on that book forever. But at the top, it's a dedication to my mom because like I talk about her a lot, but if you if everybody out there listening only knew this woman, and some have, uh, she was fantastic. She encouraged all of the things that I did. She was my best friend. So losing her was pretty brutal. It took me. I'm only honestly just now in the last year or two finally starting to come out of things and go forward. And David Kenny, as we mentioned earlier, he also had lost his mom, so we got really close. That was one of the things we got really close on, was the fact that we lost our moms like a year apart, kind of thing. So slowly I've been gathering all this wonderful support. And I started podcasting in 2019, and it was rough, but between the loss of my mom and dealing with all that emotion, and just kind of learning what it meant to be a podcaster. We, me and my co-host would be doing like 3-hour shows on games journalism, and they're still there. I'm really scared to say what it is, but if you go look up Gamer Fuel Studios Live, I believe is what the show is called, there's still about 42 or 43 episodes that are there. And don't shame me on the things I may or may not have said. A lot of it was trying to be funny and doing a lot of like weird dark comedy stuff and commentary. You figure I was 19 or not 19. I was 29. So I've learned a lot over the years and how to podcast and stuff. And I did games journalism. Didn't really work out. I started doing a show on Elder Scrolls Online because it was a game I really loved, and it's an MMO, and there weren't really shows like it going around. And I did it. I got burned down on it. I picked it up again. I got burned out on it. Because there was that thing of like what we're doing now is trying to figure out, okay, what do I have for co-hosts? How do I time myself and all this other stuff? So I did that a few times. David, as we talked about with Pop Culture FM, we got our big friend group together and did that. And while I had experience in like entertainment and stuff like that, well, what background I had considering I never went to college or anything, as I mentioned before. But we had our group, and you were actually in it for a little bit. So I always forget that you were on a
I was
couple
on
of
an
things.
episode.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. You were briefly in that whirlwind of chaos that was going on. And again, I believe there are still like the Action Sack show is still out there. You can go listen to it. We even got Adel Rafai from Hello from the Magic Tavern to be a part of it. And I look back and go, oh, God, this is so painful. Because, now having done Welcome to Oregon for almost 3 years, well, this will be going into our third year this June. Because, yeah, I did the Elder Scrolls Online podcast. And then again, I burnt out for the third time. And I sat around for about a month or two. And, as a creative, you start getting that itch. Like, oh, God, I need something to do. And my wife noticed. And she's like, oh, God, here we go again. And she's like, honey, why don't you just... I can't remember exactly how the conversation went. She's like, why don't you just, like, write history or something? You're good at it. You know everything. As I was saying before, like, I grew up with a lot of the old-timers. I was an only child. I listened to a lot of their stories and kind of picked up that cadence for storytelling. And it's funny because honestly, I too could have probably been an archaeologist because all throughout my life I was always fascinated by old stuff.
It's not too late. It's not too late. We can still get you out there. I need help.
Which,
Help me.
which honestly, uh, building out this network and building out our academic careers, that's all the kind of stuff I want to do. Obviously, in between kids and family and full-time job, until we can get this amalgamation that we're doing to become a productive company, or however we want to go forward with it. But where was I? Oh, right. Archaeology in a past life, because I've always been fascinated with old stuff. Be it an old railroad site. Rittner Cover Bridge is a perfect example out in Kings Valley, because there used to be a railroad bridge that went across, and over the years you can find iron plates, iron spikes, bits of where the bridge used to be. I don't know if I have any of those pieces anymore. But basically, so yeah, my wife is like, why don't you start doing this? And I ended up joining the Monmouth Historical Society, or not a society, historic commission, that last year actually. I think this is my I believe this is my first year. David, you actually went to the volunteer recognition dessert. That was really cool. So yeah, I started planning out Welcome to Oregon. We designed the name together. I planned out for 6 episodes of the show, 6 scripts. I only got 3 done, but I already kind of knew, having this long history of podcasting, okay, got to figure out, what the framework's got to be for the script, got to figure out what hosting platform I'm going to use, which I already knew was going to be Anchor. Which it's not Anchor anymore. We've kind of outgrown Spotify. I use Captivate FM now because I need that dynamic advertising tool because we're to be able to like swap out either random advertisements or shout outs or anything we do. Like we just got finished advertising for Bruce Harney's new book, Dirt Babies. So that book's out now, and we'll kind of figure out, where to go next with the dynamic advertising. But, I slowly but surely kind of, put together what this was going to be. And I got excited because everything started to synergize real well together. Like, oh yeah, doing the character, me being a jovial character, I'm me, but I'm also playing a character. And then I didn't want to just do Oregon history. I wanted to do a little bit of global as well. So I thought, well, how fitting would it be to kind of have this larger scope to talk about the topic and stuff, and then narrow everything down to Oregon. And even then, sometimes I don't stick there. Like this last episode that I did on it was on protests because the turmoil we live in now. I've had requests to start kind of maybe doing a little more advocation and stuff like that, obviously without crossing a line, because as an observer of history, I don't get the luxury of picking sides. I look at information and go, there's so many different facets. Like you talk about like the Vietnam War era or World War II, or just like any war as a good example. Everyone always sees good guy, bad guy, but it's not that simple. Honestly, everybody is some sort of terrible character, and everybody is some sort of magnificent hero depending on your perspective. Obviously to Nazi Germany, a lot of our heroes that, helped win that war, I mean, not now, obviously, but to them, they were horrible, evil, trying to stop, whatever it is they were doing. So it's all a matter of perspective, but, I'm doing the protest one, and I have lost my place in my mind, which can happen from time to time.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that happens to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, God, hopefully it happens to other people. It's
Trying
not
to keep 3 ADHD kids on track here. What are we doing?
You just answered your own question there.
Yeah, because then what happens is you think, okay, I put myself in the shoes of the audience member listening to this, and I'm trying to keep all these pieces together in my head. But essentially, kind of going back to the very beginning, I decided I wanted to do release it, kick off summer, release it in June, and I had three of my scripts ready. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do, like the origin of the state and all that. Oh yeah, because I was talking about my script structure, and then going to the full body, and then kind of the outro. Because one of the things I thought was a challenge was, well, how do I end this? And then someone said something about stories for another time. I'm like, that's it. That is exactly how I'm going to end it. I'm going to end each episode on kind of sort of a cliffhanger to tie into other episodes that I do, down the line. And honestly, it has worked absolutely beautifully up to this point. So
Yeah, at some point, I'm expecting that line to be on T-shirts. A story for another time, or
oh
that's
my
a story
God,
for another time.
that
That's our
is,
first
It's just
merch.
yep.
it's a fantastic tagline.
Trademark that right now.
I've borrowed it a couple of times for episodes that I've done. Actually, I think one of those times I actually attributed it to. So, but
Well,
that probably won't be on podcast for another month or two.
well, good to know that I inspire everyone as much as you guys inspire me. Because that's just it. Like, I was inspired by Aaron Mahnke's lore. I'm always like, I always get a lot of my ideas from Offbeat Oregon. No, I mean, not always, but quite often I'm like, I already have 5 months planned out, but I need a few more. So, but yeah, I'll be listening to Offbeat, and I'm like,
Wow.
that's a really good, thing that I should dive more into, because I write about 8 to 10 pages, which I have found is that's how I get my window for about 30 to 40 minutes of content, and everybody has commented on how it's perfect. It's perfect time. It's perfect tempo. So yeah, you get all these little tiny bits. You get me opening with my character. You get the global body, the main body, and then you get the like end character stuff, and it all just worked out really great. And I didn't. I wanted to do sound in the background again, based off Aaron Mahnke's lore. I really wanted to do all the cool different like piano stuff, but I realized that again, especially since Aaron does this for a living. He has the time, he has the staff to do all of this engineering stuff that I just don't. So I wanted to just have one sound that I could put at the background, and I started with Campfire. And then I started realizing that, oh, wait, what if I do a different sound each time that kind of gives the illusion uh, that you're finding me somewhere in the state that has to do with the topic and stuff. And sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes I just have a background sound just to have a background sound. That's kind of sort of ties in close. Again, talking about the protest one, I go off of freesound.com, so I look up. I sometimes I have difficulty finding like an appropriate like with the protest one, an appropriate protest sound that you're kind of hearing the sound, but you're not like being overwhelmed by it and realizing that, oh, this protest is taking place in Venezuela. That's weird. So, I took a lot of time and care with that, and again, everything just all snapped together once, and then I launched June 21st, 2023, and like I said, yeah, we're going into our third year. Not we'll be completing year two, which is really weird. It feels like much longer.
Feels like shorter to me. I mean, gee whiz. I guess they do say though that time accelerates as you get older. So maybe that's the maybe that's the deal. It's like speeding by faster than a speeding bullet.
Well, and for me, I swear to God, I live in dog years. So like, oh, this last week has felt like three. Maybe it's just because the temperature's been warmer. If you're looking on YouTube, you might see that I'm a little red from work. But yeah, I had a vision when I started all of this, and I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure how true I was going to keep to that. It's been a lot of different changes. I kind of knew I wanted to do a network, but at the same time, I'd already several times tried doing like doing the comedy network with all of our friends and stuff, and that didn't go well. And that was kind of the reason I just wanted to do solo work. I can control it. I don't have to work on anyone's time schedule but my own. So it kind of got a little scary this past several months when I'm realizing that so many people are interested in wanting to collaborate and hang out. And I'm like, you can feel the pull. And that's just it. I even talked to my wife and I'm like, so honey, I'm feeling like a network's starting to form. And she's like, cool. Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm like, what? I expect you to be like, really? You're doing this again?
Well, you've got your moral compass there.
Yeah.
It sounds like she's kind of in tune with who you are and what you actually want out of your life and out of your work.
Yeah.
I feel like most people have at least one character like that in their lives. Like for me, it's my mom. I bounce everything off of her.
Your mom is great. I'm so glad I got to meet her. Yeah, this is what I've always wanted to do, and I try not to talk about it too much because, in a way, I don't want to necessarily, you know, bash my parents for what my life was like and the restrictions I had. Uh, but realistically, the family business had expectations, specifically from my dad, that I tried to live up to, and in reality, I didn't necessarily want to. I wanted to do other things. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to do, academic work and all this other stuff. Apologies for the sound in the background if you can hear clambering around. So, I wanted to do all this work, and it's really cool that I'm getting to do it, but also at the same time, it's kind of that dread of, oh my God, I'm restarting my life in my 30s. Like I lost 10 years of potential, like stuff I could have done, which you can't look at that. You got to look back at your life and go, no, these are the things that led me up to this point in time.
You were learning some lessons for those 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So now I get the opportunity to actually build an academic career and make a difference. That's always been the goal of my life is, I want to make a difference and I want to pull people together and unite to make a difference and stuff like that. So, like you guys, I could probably go on and on about about things which I'm sure you listeners and viewers out there are going to hear a lot of anecdotes and really cool stuff from us down the road, and of course get to sit and hear amazing conversations with other people and guests. Like I said, I want to bring Chelsea Rose on. I've been talking with, or I reached out to Black Pioneer History and getting, I believe her name's Kimberly Moreland, I think, and getting her on. And, we have colleagues to bring on. We have Daryl Jabin we can bring on and just all these really cool people and get to tell their stories. So, at the end of the day, that's one of the reasons I'm so excited and charged to get to do this show, and not to mention sitting and getting to hang out with you guys and getting to learn more about you as colleagues and friends and all this other stuff. So do you guys have any other things to say before we head off?
I think we've said it all.
Well, I'm really excited about this. This has been a lot of fun. So I'm,
Yeah, no, I think this has been a long time coming, to be honest. So, but everything just fell into place. And again, sorry guys for this being like an hour and 20 minutes long, but it's the first episode. Everything's gonna get fine tuned, refined. We are professionals that have no idea what we're doing. Okay, well, with that, let me swivel my head on over to the document that I can't. I'm prepared, I swear. Alrighty, guys, thank you so much for joining us. This episode was brought to you by the Oregon Voices Network, which, again, I know we didn't really get to that part and talk about it. Just real quick, it's all part of that coming together that we're doing. We want to try to represent as many of our colleagues in the work as possible, but of course, in the course of time, we've kind of refined that down because we needed to have one narrow identity for the time being. We're a historical podcast network. That brings you amazing shows like Welcome to Oregon, a Oregon history and lore podcast, Offbeat Oregon, and the Penny Dreadful Story Hour. If you want to be part
Woohoo.
of the conversation, we do have a Facebook group that you can check out for the Oregon Voices Network, where you will find us and many of our guests we have on this show. And if you love our work, you should seriously consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/Oregon Voices Network. The money goes towards all of our projects and helps us pay for things like software, assets, and more. If you are listening to the audio version of the show, you can find more of our work on YouTube at youtube.com/Oregon Voices Network. All right, gentlemen, this is your time to plug.
Oh,
Crickets,
wow.
crickets.
Oh, the tension. You can find me on. I have pretty much every social media. You can find me on pretty much everything at the Spirit of PDX.
How appropriate. How absolutely appropriate.
Nice.
Little throwback to my cosplay days.
Yay.
And I'm Finn at offbeatoregon.com or Finn at pulp-lit.com. I have a Facebook that I go to from time to time to keep in touch with elderly relatives, but you know, that's kind of about it. It's a little bit strange to be moving away from social media after such a great run.
Yeah, you're a real joy to get a hold of on a weekly basis. I'm like, okay, I'm going to email him. I'm going to message him on Facebook. Screw it, I'm going to text him.
We've started training pigeons.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll send you I'll send you some smoke signal information, and we can get that going.
Oh, perfect. Just one more form of communication.
Uh-huh.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And all of us here at the Influential... we're doing great. All of us at the Influential Oregonian, you have a wonderful and safe day.
Fill it up with good stuff too.
Yes, there it is.
Yes.
Bye.